All right. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much, Catherine, for taking the time out of your busy campaign schedule to join us for this chat with the Lewis and Clark County Democratic Central Committee. For those who don't know, my name is Quinlan O'Connor, and I'm chair of the Lewis and Clark County Democratic Central Committee. And we put these together as an opportunity to hear from our great slate of candidates in the county about why they're running, what their interests are, what they hope to accomplish in the upcoming legislative session if they're elected. And this isn't the only opportunity. If people aren't available to join us at 6:30 on a Thursday night, they can always find these recordings online on our website, on YouTube, on Facebook, and hear from Catherine and our other candidates about why they're running. If people in attendance have any questions, you can feel free to enter them into the chat box or just raise your hand, and we will make sure to allot some time for that. So Catherine, before we really begin, where is Senate District 40?
Well, Senate District 40 is quite large. It goes, out to Silly Lake, almost to Deer Lodge. It goes into Powell County. It takes up the west side of Helena. It also takes up the North Valley up to around Wolf Creek and some portions of East Valley, Helena. So it's fairly large. I think there's almost 3,000 square miles in Senate District 40.
Wow. Well, so tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the office.
Well, I have been in public service and law enforcement, criminal justice for almost 30 years now. And I have a master's degree in public administration, and I'm currently working towards my doctorate in public health. I'm actually working on my dissertation portion of it at this point in time. So I'm hoping, keep your fingers crossed, completing that May of 2021. And then I'm also a certified fraud examiner. I've done a number of fraud examinations throughout different organizations that I've worked with. And I have two children. One is 15, and who's my daughter, Haley, and my son is 12, both of them at the Helena School District, both of them doing digital learning at this present moment. So that's also fun. And yes. And then I'm married. My husband works for the Public Defender's Office as an attorney. And so and we have a dog. It's a rescue dog that we just got this year, and she's a wonderful young lady. Her name is Scout, so she's an awesome dog, and we're hoping to branch out and add another one of them because my son now wants his own dog. He says,
oh, there you go. Always fun.
My daughter's latched onto Scout quite well. So
great. So why are you running for Senate District 40?
Well, a number of different reasons. When I first started getting into the thought of running, it had a lot to do with public health, the services that were lacking or being taken away. Also, I'm a huge proponent of women's rights and making sure that their reproductive rights stay solidified. And I was noticing that we were getting legislation that was pushing personhood, and that's just something that I didn't share. Let's see, ideologically share that particular stance on personhood. And so I believe women should have the choice and right to make their own decisions about their own body and their own health. And so those are some of the reasons. Other reasons were schools, a lack of funding and how they were using the funding and how things are being funneled. And then I'm kind of eclectic, I just have to tell you, so I kind of have different things. But also being a fraud examiner that I've done in my lifetime, I look for accountability, and I found that there was a lot in this state that does not provide a good accountability for a number of services, as well as how monies are being used, and really adhering to public meetings and the providing Freedom of Information Act without lawsuits sometimes for some entities. And I felt that that was wrong, and I think there should be some legislation that really shores up what citizens can do to really affect that change, to make sure that those public entities are actually adhering to public meetings properly, providing the necessary information on how they're distributing funds or appropriating funds, and how they're handling themselves while on, in public office.
Great. So what do you hope to accomplish during the upcoming session if you are elected?
Well, a couple of things. First, I want to, and in 2017, there was legislation or funding that was actually stripped away from the Department of Public Health and Safety, and DPHHS, Department of Public Health and Human Safety. Okay, make sure I got that entire acronym down. But it was stripped away in 2017 for quite a bit of money. I want to say it's like over 200 million, and then they went back during an interim session and then took another 49 million, which actually, by the time you put a dollar federal dollar match, you're actually losing a lot more than that, because the state will put up, say they put up 20 million, you normally get a $1 to $2 match on the federal government side, so you get another 20 million, maybe a 30 million if it's a $2 match, depending on the services. And so when you take away 20 million on the state side, you're actually losing that or more on the federal side for money coming in. And so they took quite a bit of money and services for populations that would be mental health, low income individuals, elderly, that were really needed services. And that money came through the state in like a pass through. So what it did is that the state received the money, or they got the money from taxes, and they then allocated that money to services through nonprofits or for-profits. And so those nonprofits and for-profits actually, those are all jobs, and these jobs are not something that you can just go out and readily get, because a lot of them are specialized professions, therapists, doctors, clinicians. These take a long time to get people here that have that type of training. It takes a long time to get that training sometimes. And so when they did away with that funding, you left a lot of people unable to not only get those services that they really needed, but you also ended up taking away a money source and really jobs from people, and forcing people that had a professional background in therapy or medicine, and actually driving them out of the state because they had no other opportunities. And so they actually left the state. So we lost a lot of public health workers as well. And so I want to see about trying to bring back that funding for the needed services for mental health services and such. And that goes across the board for a number of different things. Let's just say and it hits not only on the public health, but it also hits in law enforcement and corrections and that type of where it's funneled to, because we don't have the treatment centers necessary to house or to treat individuals with mental health services, and oftentimes they're shunted into correctional services. Correctional services do not have mental health services incorporated into them oftentimes, and the state hospital, there are people that are waiting over a year sitting in a correctional facility waiting to get evaluated through for clinical aspects at the state hospital, because they don't have the room for one and they don't have the funding for another. And so we're backed up on all this. And so those type of things are really what we need to do, and we need to look at it holistically. How's it going to be best to funnel people through? How are we going to be actually utilize this to not only help people with jobs, but also help people get qualified personnel that's going to actually deliver the needed services and to these individuals that need those services, that's actually going to make a difference. And so that's one big, huge issue that, I would like to tackle going into this legislature. That said, we are this is COVID. So It's going to be a different legislature. I don't even know if we're going to be even meeting in person or if it's all going to be done by Zoom. I don't know how with the job losses that we're facing from the COVID, it just depends on how much money is coming in. So these things are all going to be contingent upon really what's coming in, what we're seeing. I understand that Montana, however, has done very well in keeping jobs compared to other states, and that we're setting fairly well financially. So that's a good thing. So that's just one aspect. As far as law enforcement, since I've had criminal justice background, some of the things that I would like to see is more accountability with law enforcement, such as use of force, that the law enforcement agency that has an officer that has they violated a use of force aspect of it, if it rises to a certain level, that another agency has to investigate that rather than the agency itself, because oftentimes law enforcement, not always, let's just put it that way, not always, but a lot of times law enforcement, these are their friends, these are their co-workers, they have a vested interest, they have a bias, and they want to protect their people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when you're dealing in law enforcement, you need to have individuals that are suited to be law enforcement officers, and you need to have individuals that have good judgment. And what you want is to have a fair assessment. Is this person really suited for a law enforcement job? And are they going beyond the scope of what they need to in use of force or power and control tactics than is necessary, where they're causing harm, and they're going to continuously cause harm. Law enforcement is here, is there for a public service, for community service, and that's the type of officer we want. And so I think if you are having your use of force not only be taped, because you've got to have the body cams, and you should have those on at all times, but also that you're having either a panel of agencies or a citizen panel to look that over, to make sure that there is clarity to what actually is happening, that you're getting all the evidence to see if in fact that officer did violate something. And also to remedy any individual that really should be not, like I said, should not be in law enforcement. You have, law enforcement officers are given a certification. It's not their right to have that certification, it is their privilege to have that certification. And as such, you're to respect that privilege to have a certification. It's something you should be always achieving and putting yourself out there. So to do the very best for the community. And so if you're not doing that, or you're doing things that would be contrary to good behavior or moral ethics, you don't need to have that certification. You should not have the privilege to that certification. And so that's just a couple things there. As far as there are others, I think also too, we need to make sure that we're tracking through a centralized area arrests, as far as use of force arrests, but arrests in the state, the ethnicity or race of an individual, to see if there is a potential for a bias that's going on in the community, and see if we can address that and what's going on that. A lot of that can be dealt with through training. And I think we need to expand the training. We have 12 weeks here in Montana for training. And I think that truly needs to be expanded. They need more resources in that avenue to give better training and more time in training. And I know they're trying that through a number of different avenues, but they are, of course, limited by funds. Again, it's all down to funds. Another thing that I feel that law enforcement officers, they come in at age 18 oftentimes, and they only need a high school diploma. And I really believe we should start them off at 21 years of age and have at least a 2-year or 4-year degree before they're allowed into the academy. I think that provides a better individual that has a little bit of understanding about situations and how to handle things than somebody directly out of high school that's 18 years of age, handing them that type of authority and deadly weapons and that kind of thing. And I'm sure individuals will sit here and go, yes, but we send them off to war. This is entirely different. War is very, very much structured. Not war, but military is very structured. And you have a great deal more direction in being told how to do things. Law enforcement, you send them out there to handle face to face. They're on the streets. It's not structured like that. You need somebody that has an ability to be more community oriented and understand safety. It's not a war zone, it's a community zone. And so, and we also need to train officers that this isn't a war zone, it is a community zone. This isn't a paramilitary operation. This is a protect and serve the community. And so Montana's not really bad on that, which is really nice. Where other states are very paramilitary, Montana is not that way. But we do need to, we can strive to make some real good efforts to make it even better than what we have it. So there's a couple things.
Great. Okay, thank you. Do you have thoughts about what the upcoming session will look like in terms of revenue raising? Is that going to be something that's necessary? I know that you mentioned that Montana is in pretty good shape, even through COVID, because of the rainy day fund set aside by our governor and those sorts of things. But do you think that more is going to need to be done?
Yes, I actually do think so. I know in 2003, they did a income reduction on income tax here in Montana, and it changed it from 10 to 6 different income tax brackets. And what it did was it took the top highest being 11% and put it down to 6.9%. So a person that was making, say, $18,000, they were at 6.9%. Somebody that was making $100,000 or more were at 11%. And so they knocked off those upper income brackets so that everybody's making what, paying the same income tax of 6.9%. So that really provided individuals very wealthy individuals, a boon as far as taxes. Now, and I hear this thing about taxes, hey, we're taxed this. We're taxed for goods and services in a way, but we do it for the purpose of the community, making sure our community and our state work well and helps everyone. That means good roads, law enforcement, snow removal, EMS, fighting fires. I mean, these are things that all of us need, and we're paying in for that service. And so what happens is what's really happened since they've taken that away, it's shifted. People have to find money to pay for those services. So what happens is cities and counties are now stuck with, how do we pay for snow removal, law enforcement? How do we take care of schools? And so what happens is you're seeing your property taxes going up and up and up. Now on the rich, they have one house, right? Very rich, they could have a house that's 500,000. Somebody that's middle class have one for 250,000, and they're going to pay a fairly significant amount for property taxes, and it's going to continuously go up. And oftentimes, if you have a lot of land along with that house, you can put animals with it and get a reduction in your taxes. Well, most middle class and low income individuals are not going to be able to get these type of deductions, so they're actually paying even less. So what happens is that the rich pay a lot less, and the middle and lower class pay a lot more. In fact, what they found when they did studies after this was not only did they take the income tax bracket away, they also took passive income taxing away in a way. What it does is basically, think of this: your wage earner, which is, say, your fireman, he makes $50,000 a year. And the passive income person makes $50,000 a year off of sale of property or bonds, stocks, things of that nature. He gets taxed at 2%. The fireman gets taxed at 6.9%. So you can make the same amount. One's going to get taxed more on, going out there and doing hard work. Another's going to get taxed a lot less by just letting their money work for them and not doing anything other than having a bond or a stock. So that's what happened in 2003. So over the period of time, we've lost well over $1 billion over that period of time. And that could have gone into road building, which infrastructure is a job producer, helping with broadband and internet speeds. Broadband and internet speeds in this state is dead last, pretty much. I think we're internet speed, we're 49, broadband dead last in the nation, which is pretty bad. And, keeping our fresh water supply routes updated. We're 75 to 100 years outdated in doing that. And, those lines, they start to corrode over time. You can end up having your fresh water supply be contaminated. And this is a bad deal for everybody in the community. So these are some of the things that we could do. And there's where, we could relook at that. We may not push it to 11%. You can have tax brackets that are at 125, 150,000, but where it would be more fair for everyone and not push down into other areas that really are impacting low and middle class individuals far more than the wealthy. So those are some ways to do that.
All right. What's your strategy for working across party lines in the legislature?
Really, it comes down to being able to find common ground. What is it we want to achieve, and how do we think we can achieve it? And you have to be reasonable. You have to be willing to compromise, and you have to be willing to talk. And so I think if you're capable of just putting out, here's where I'd like to go, here's where I'd like to go, and then get someone else's opinion, because what you want to do is you want to look from different perspectives. So a lot of times we have blinders on and we see from our perspective, and we don't see maybe what another person sees. So we want to see if they will talk to us about what the pros and cons of what you would like to do, or what they would like to do, what it would be, and how it would best fit the community without causing any harm. That's always, anytime you do legislation, you want to, what's going to be the benefit, minimize the harm. And so I think if you could really reasonably talk to most people, that and work together and saying, here's what we need. And for the most part, both Democrats and Republicans are pretty close together on a lot of stuff. There are some that, we're just not going to come to an agreement with. But for the most part, we are very close together. It's just coming to an agreement and be willing to agree. And I think that is the best way to handle that, and to, develop coalitions, that kind of thing.
What do you think the biggest challenge facing the 2021 legislature is going to be?
Dealing with COVID at this present moment. How do we keep the community safe, get our kids to where they're socializing in a way, where it's more so into schools, where we feel safer to do that, keeping small businesses open. There are certain things that are not going to do well for a while, because there's just the way like going to a gym. There may not be a lot of people that are willing to go to a gym and work out, because you're expelling so much air, out of your lungs and everything, and people don't feel comfortable putting a mask on. And so these areas are going to be more difficult to figure out. How do you do that in a safe manner where people feel safe, and it is a safe manner that people come back? So these things will be trying for anyone. There is no perfect solution. That's the problem. No matter what, we're all in it the first time, and we're trying to find the best routes for everyone that causes the minimal harm and yet keeps people safe. And so I think that's going to be the most difficult part of it. And when people are losing their small business and their livelihood, individuals are going to be hostile. I mean, you're putting them in a bad situation. So we've got to find ways to minimize that. and we've got to find ways to help them. So these are things that will be the hardest thing to go forth.
And what do you think the legislature's role is in boosting the economy and helping small businesses in particular to get through COVID?
I think it's extremely important. I think we have to find public-private partnerships and help build that. Some of the things that we could do is ranchers and farmers being able to have their goods more centralized in Montana, more locally, able to house them and logistically move them out to stores and things of that nature. We recently we understood that we have these large corporations that have a lot of these goods, and then they couldn't get them out logistically, so people were without certain goods that they needed: toilet paper, foods. Even now you look at shelves and they're not full in some areas. And so if we were to get a little bit more where local goes to your local store and find ways to do that, your local cow, when you're sitting here killing off your livestock because you can't sell them, there's a problem with that. And so we need to find ways to address that, and we need to find ways to where we can sustain ourselves locally if something like this were to happen again. And I have a feeling it very well may happen at some point again, that something like this may happen again in the near decade or 2 or 3. We need to have provisions that are going to address that on a local level, and we need to support our local farmers and our ranchers because they sustain our communities, they sustain our life, they feed us. So we've got to find ways to help them out, and if that means helping them out by supplementing them, we do so to keep them going.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
They're pretty much the lifeline of the country.
So if people want to help with your campaign, what should they do?
So I have a website. It's catherinescott4montana.com, and there's a donate button on that website that you could go to. If you also want to help out, there's a contact that you can write into the contact, and it will and let me know if you want to help out on the campaign for making calls or going door to door, and certainly we'll put you to work. That's not a problem. And so yeah, we can do that. It's not a problem. But so catherinescott4montana.com, and 4, by the way, is FOR, and it's all spelled out. I couldn't make it easy for anyone. I had to make sure it was all spelled out.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight. And we really appreciate it. But we also know that you have a lot of campaigning to get back to. And so we'll keep this to the half an hour like I promised. And yeah, just thank you very much.
Thank you.